Greetings. I'm Gary Brower. I'm your instructor for this class and want to sort of give you a little bit of orientation to what's going on here. First, I just want to say a bit about the clip I had you watch there from the miniseries Gettysburg. Came out quite a while ago now. I'll refer to it a little bit later. It was important in my thinking about this class. So anyway, a little bit about me. I am currently the rector at Good Shepherd Episcopal Church in Centennial, so a little bit south of Denver, near IKEA, and have been here since September of 2018. I'll certainly say more about my background and all of that when we do some more in-depth introductions, but just a little bit about that. I have been here, like I say, since 2018. I've been in the diocese since 2007 and have done a lot of different things in the diocese. Some of you may know that I'm the chair of the Board of Examining Chaplains, and I've met some of you through that avenue. I'm also the diocesan ecumenical and interfaith officer. I serve on the Creation Care Task Force, and I'm on the disciplinary board, one of those things that you never want to have a meeting about. Anyway, so I've been around. Again, more on me a little bit later. But I am the instructor for this class, and while its technical thing on the ILIF website is intergenerative preparation for the GOEs, I have always thought about it in my mind as sort of the Episcopal Church different dreams, and that refers back to the Gettysburg clip. And again, I'll say more about that later. I originally taught this course 10 years ago, and then I was asked to do it again, which I'm very happy to do so. A few words about that. When I taught it the first time, I was just learning the technology of Canvas and some of the other things that were going on. And so you'll see that as we go through. There are some older videos. I decided not to re-record all of them, just the ones that I really thought were either dated or I've changed the assignments a bit, some things like that. But when I started this, did this 10 years ago, YouTube was limited in terms of the amount that you could record on any video. So you'll see that there in some classes, there may be a series of videos, 10-minute videos. You're kind of limited, so that's why this one should be fine a little bit longer. But I've had to rework the class certainly in the last 10 years for new context, socio-political realities, technological realities. Certainly learned a lot running a church during COVID time and doing all of the worship and all of that kind of stuff via Zoom. So anyway, I'm happy to do this, and it was fun to do the first time, and I'm trusting that it will be fun to do this time as well. So what I want to do right now is just sort of give you an overview of the class and what the original intention was and how I kind of think through things. And again, when I do my larger introduction, when we do our group introductions, I'll fill in a little bit more of those blanks. But this class is originally intended to help prepare y'all for ordination exams. And I recognize that not everybody's going to be ordained and not everybody's going to sit for the exams, but that was what it was originally intended for. But also, what I wanted to get is to help you sort of recognize that in this work of ministry, however we perceive it, there's a lot of integrative work that is done. And when I was in seminary at Church Divinity School of the Pacific a long time ago, one of the classes that we were given was called Integrative Theology. And this was back in the 80s. And we were, basically, it wasn't a GOE prep course in a precise sense, but it really worked that way. We had to think through a lot of sort of parish related issues and things like that based on theology and social dynamics and history and all those kinds of things. And so that was always rattling around in the back of my mind as I thought about this class. But what really we're going to be doing here is looking at the 6 canonical areas in which those of you who will sit for the exams will be examined. And I'm sure you have those at the tip of your tongue, but in case you don't, they are, in terms of how the church thinks about itself, they are Holy Scripture, church history, including the ecumenical movement, Christian theology, including missionary theology, Christian ethics and moral theology, as opposed to just technical theology, but moral theology, liturgics and church music, and then the theory and practice of ministry, which is pastoral care and things like that. So those are the areas that you'll be examined on come January of the year that you're sitting for the exams. The last group of folks, our 3 diocesan folks, just finished the exams a couple weeks ago by the time that you're seeing this. So given that, my assumptions going into this class, and they may not fit for all of you, and that's fine, are that this was originally thought to be kind of a capstone class, one of those things that you would take really shortly before you took the GOEs. It's not going to be quite that way now because here we are in the winter, and the next GOEs won't be for a year. But this will still, I hope, give you a means of thinking through this. I was talking to one of the students that I had 10 years ago, who's now a priest in this diocese, and he said that what we did in this class really helped him get through the GOEs. It gave him a structure for thinking through some things, and that's really what I would hope for all of you. So I have to assume that you've had classes in all of these areas, or you shortly will. That doesn't mean that you've had advanced classes in biblical studies or something like that, but you have at least had some introduction to most of these. And so, but I'm going to bring my own spin to these classes. As you'll hear a little bit later, I've been doing this kind of work for a long time. And so I have a particular way of looking at things that is sometimes a little different. And so when I'm doing that, I may bring up stuff that you already know. But I can't assume that you all know all the same stuff. But then I'll also bring in perhaps some new perspectives, things that I've learned along the way, or that have caught me up short. So all of that I would hope would be helpful for you. I'm assuming, so that's one thing, is that you've had classes in most of this material. I'm assuming too that your aim is ministry in the church rather than in the academy. So whether that's in a university or a college or a seminary, that you're really looking to take what you're doing at Iliff and translating that into work in the church. Not that you're using it as an academic degree. Now, you may end up doing that. I earned my MDiv, and then I went on and earned a doctorate beyond that. But I was preparing for work in the church, and then I decided to transition that into a different direction when I went off and did my doctorate. So given that, the assignments are not going to be academic assignments. There are certain things that they will not be. They will not be group assignments because the GOEs are not a group experience. They're all about you. They will not be essays per se. It's not like you're going to have to write a 7-page paper. And why? Because you're rarely asked to write an essay in the parish. You may have to write a newsletter article, you may have to write an editorial for a local paper, but you're not going to sit down and write a 7-page essay. I've never been asked in the church to do that. They will be things that would be appropriate. The assignments will be things that will be appropriate for a church setting. So like I say, there might be a newsletter or an editorial. You might be preparing a adult ed class or a confirmation class, or responding to something in society or something like that. So the assignments will be different. And because it's not going to be an essay driven class, you'll have other tools that you can use. So some of these are, clearly, if you're doing a presentation using PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever your presentation software is, would be appropriate for this. This isn't a content class. This isn't to test how much you know, to give me the right date for something or anything like that. This is a utilization course. How do you use what you know in all of these different kinds of settings? And again, not everybody is going to be in the same setting. Some of you might make it to be a rector, and you will have certain responsibilities and roles to fulfill in that. You might be an associate clergy person who has particular roles to play in a large congregation, responsibility for pastoral care. That doesn't mean that you won't preach or you won't do it, but that may be it. You may be on staff in a different way as a Christian education director or as a musician. In all of those, can you bring to bear what you've learned at ILIF or other schools? I've seen a lot of GOE questions. They aren't necessarily essay questions, although they kind of come out that way. But they ask you to think about different things in different ways. And that's what I'm going to give you the opportunity to do. So as I go on, certainly over the next few lectures, there will be more details about how all of this will go. But some of the features of this class, which are either maybe puzzling or intriguing, come out of my own sort of idiosyncrasies. Those of you who've met me or who know me know that I rarely do anything kind of straight down the line. I like taking a different tack on things. When I was in graduate school, for example, I taught a New Testament class, undergraduate New Testament class while I was a graduate student. And unlike almost any New Testament class that I've never ever seen, I taught the class chronologically by when the books of the New Testament were written, not by, we'll start with Jesus. I want to start with Paul, who wrote before any of the Gospels were written. So what was he saying before those? So that was a different take on doing the New Testament. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. I taught a course when I was at DU called Angels in the Architecture, and it was all about how the building a church building tells the story of its faith tradition and the nature of its congregation. So this was a comparative religions class, but we weren't talking about comparing texts. We went from building to building to building, whether it was a synagogue or a mosque or a church or a Buddhist temple, and had somebody there explain to us how this building talked about what we think, what we believe, what we hold dear. And then since I've been at Good Shepherd, I've taught a sacraments class, but what I taught it was called Sacraments at a Slant. And I was really doing it through a comparative religions perspective. So when we talked about baptism, we talked about initiation rites and how baptism looked like initiation rites in other traditions. So I take a different tack on things, and that's what I'm doing with this class, and why I chose to call it Different Dreams. And this is where I want to go back to that Gettysburg clip, where you'll remember that the British guy, Fremantle, Colonel Fremantle, says, "Oh, different dreams. We have all of this stuff, but we have different dreams. Sad, so very sad." You can go back and look at it and get the context for that. But when I was watching this movie, when it came out, I was thinking about the Anglican Communion's turmoil over issues of sexuality. That goes back a ways. That's when the miniseries came out. And how would we hold together, given all of the turmoil that the church was and continues to go through? We still see this being played out with all of the groups who are or are not in the Anglican Communion, but who trace their lineage to Henry VIII and what went on in the 16th and 17th centuries. So what I wanted to do is talk about the various things that we'll address this quarter, not so much in questions of right or wrong, but pretty much in the questions of different dreams. We approach things differently because of different dreams that we have. And that's what Fremantle was trying to tell General Longstreet in that clip from Gettysburg. So that's where this different dreams things comes from, and I'll say more about that a little while later. But that's where this concept comes from. So we'll talk about dreams and different dreams, but we're also going to talk about this book that I've asked you to get by Frazee and Bader called America's Four Gods. And it's a very very good book, even though it's not 10 years old or a little older. They continue to do, Frazee and his colleagues continue to do work at Baylor University on this American Religions Project. And this book sort of has recognized or has posited that all Americans, with the exception of atheists who don't sort of have God as part of their conceptual framework, fit into one of four categories, irrespective of their religious tradition. If they're religious at all, their God will fit into one of these four categories that the book will discuss. And if those four gods are represented in America, then they're going to be represented in our congregations. Some may be more diversely represented than others, but you're going to have different ideas about who or what God is and how God interacts with the world. And that helps color the kinds of dreams that we have for what is going on going forward. So, and it raises the question of how do we address our people, the people in our congregation, given the four gods that they hold dear. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as time goes on. Also, I'm asking you to read, and you'll see this in the assignment coming up, a couple of reviews. I'm not going to ask you to read the whole book. A couple of reviews of a very influential book by Reinhold H. Richard Niebuhr from some time ago on Christ and culture. How does the church, or how do we as Christians believe that Christ interacts with culture? And you may have run across this in some of your classes at Iliff or elsewhere, but it's a very helpful framework, again, to help inform us about how we think about the dreams that are represented in our congregations. And I just one quick example. Sometime several years ago, after we were able to come back from COVID, but also at the time that the country and churches were embroiled in the debates about Black Lives Matter and things like that, I had a member of a congregation tell me that the church was no longer her grandmother's church. Now, that represents a dream of what the church should look like. And it looked like the church was moving away from that dream. And so how do we deal with folks for whom the dream doesn't seem to hold anymore? And what does that mean? So the assignments will have these assumptions, all of these assumptions as an underlay, that you're not an expert in the field, that you're not writing for an academic purpose, but that you're thinking about how do we relate with folks in our congregations who are who dream differently than we do about the interaction between God and us, or God and our society, and how do we move forward with those different dreams. So that's one aspect of this class. The other one is what I call the Patronus, or the Matrona, if you have a female theologian that you'll be working with. My idea here, and I'll flesh this out in more depth a little while later, is that I want you to become very familiar with one theological thinker. One, I want you to be very conversant with one theological thinker. It doesn't have to be a professional theologian. It doesn't have to be Stanley Hauerwas or somebody like that. It can be somebody who's maybe a good thinker, but wasn't trained as a theologian. And we'll, like I say, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But someone who's thought deeply and theologically about issues. I think about Barbara Brown Taylor, for example. I wouldn't say that she was trained as a professional theologian. She was a clergy person and taught, at a college, but she's written a lot and has clearly thought a lot about a lot of different issues over her time, and she has left a large body of work. So there's somebody who's not necessarily a professional theologian, in the same way that somebody like, let's say, Stanley Hauerwas or some others would be, but somebody who's thought a lot. And so at the end of the class, you'll know this one person really well, but you'll also get to know the theologians or the patronuses or the matrona of your classmates. So you'll come away with 5 or 6 theologians that you will know relatively well who thought about all of these various issues, some more deeply in one direction, some more deeply in another direction. So that the GOEs come, you'll have one person that you can always rely on. And it won't be just referring to the bottom of a book, some footnote. You'll say, oh yeah, I remember when Martin Luther said something about this particular topic, and I can pull that in. It will be part of who you've become as a thinker in the church. So as we move forward, how is this class going to work? Well, basically there will only generally be two assignments a week. And I learned 10 years ago that this was a relatively good progression. And this will begin in our 3rd week. The first 2 weeks will be sort of preparatory work. So the first weekly assignment will be the content piece, and it will be a project related to one of the canonical areas. And you'll be addressing different audiences. There will be different contexts, different presentation styles. And you can use any materials you want, including your Patronus or your Matrona, to address the question. And that assignment will be due on Wednesday nights. The second assignment will be to discuss with your classmates how your Patronus or Matrona addressed or informed your response to the first assignment. And I'll provide a guiding question for that, and that will be due on Friday nights. So the hard piece will be that thing that's coming up through Wednesday, when you're up on Wednesday, and you will find yourself, if you haven't already, find yourself in a church situation where you're doing stuff, and all of a sudden you've got to be ready for a class on Sunday, a 45-minute or a 50-minute adult ed class or something like that. And so these things kind of come up week by week. And I recognize that. So that's why there is this chunk of time from when the assignment is given, and it will show up basically at midnight on Saturday night. So you'll have from Saturday to Wednesday to work on this one sort of assignment. And then from Thursday night through Friday, so a couple of days, to just sort of say, well, this is how my Patronus responded to Holy Scripture, or thought about Holy Scripture, or something like that, and then respond with your classmates. There's not going to really be any working ahead. It won't serve you at all to be doing that. So the classes will be, each assignment will become available at midnight on Saturday nights, and then you'll have time to work on it because each class session is sort of discrete. Again, we'll explain more of that as we go on. Fortunately, in terms of calendar issues, we only have Ash Wednesday between now and the end of class. When I taught this 10 years ago, we had Holy Week. And so there were lots of issues about, I don't have enough time. So this is the only time that we'll have that. We only have one sort of religious holiday in the middle of the semester. But there are other realities, especially as you are, if you're doing field ed, concurrent field ed, you may be asked to do something in your parish that demands a lot of time. Please let me know if that's the case so that we can see how we can work around it. And that, of course, applies to me. I am the rector of a relatively large parish with a lot of elderly people, and unfortunately, they get necessary to deal with pastoral care, death, dying issues, and things like that. So I'm usually very responsive, but if something slides up, I will let you know in the announcements. The grading, the rubrics are all posted in the grading and overviews. You can take a look at them. I have every belief that you will all do fine, but the rubrics are there so that you can take a look at them. In the syllabus itself, it gives you how to contact me. That's my cell phone number that's there. You can call me, you can text me. Email is probably the best for any number of reasons. It's a constant reminder on my email that I have to respond. And if you text me and I'm unavailable to get that text, I may not see it. So, but know that you can get a hold of me in any of those kind of ways. I'm happy to meet, given my schedule. I live by Cherry Creek Reservoir, and my church is down, again, like I say, down in the southern suburbs, down by IKEA. So I'm relatively flexible, and of course I can meet by Zoom or FaceTime. We can have a cup of coffee, just let me know. And then, as I mentioned in the announcement that I sent out a couple of weeks ago, do we want to set up a dream time, a Zoom time? I'm not sure what your schedules are, but I think that I've heard from other people that they found that helpful, since this is all asynchronous, to have maybe 1 hour a week that I would just be sitting there on Zoom, and if anybody wanted to come in and talk with me or talk with each other, that would be appropriate. So let me know if that would be good for you. So I suggest now, as I close out this session, that you begin, if you haven't already ordered Bader and Frazee, to do so and begin reading it, and to begin reading the reviews of Niebuhr's Christ in Culture.